there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I'm going to be doing some fantasy book recommendations. If you liked this book, then you should read this book, and I have 5 recommendations for you guys. But before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new bookish videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to my Buddy Read Discord, my Patreon, where I do book giveaways, as well as my Amazon shop, where I have linked all of the books that I discuss on my channel. My first recommendation is, if you liked Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, then you might like Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. So obviously both of these are vampire novels, and both of these have very similar atmospheres and tone. They are incredibly dark. And in Interview with the Vampire, we are following Louis, who is a vampire, but he's not like a feral, evil vampire. A lot of this book is his growth as this being and his constant introspection. And in Empire of the Vampire, we are following Gabriel, and Gabriel is actually a silver saint, so he is not a full-blooded vampire. He is part vampire, and because of that, he has the ability to do certain things with blood like a vampire would, but he has actually been tasked, because of these abilities, to hunt vampires, because his kingdom where he lives is constantly at war with these beings. The reason that I say that these books complement each other is because both of them are told in first-person perspective, and both of them are following the lives and the journeys of these two characters. And both of these characters are telling a story to someone else that is dictating for them. So in Interview with the Vampire, Louis is dictating to a journalist who is recording as Louis tells his life story. Gabriel, who at the beginning of the book we learned is imprisoned, is recounting his life story to the historian of the new vampire empress. One of the 2 main similarities that I found in this book was both of these characters questioning good and evil, whether their actions were good and evil, whether because of what they were made them more able to commit evil versus good, as well as God or the creator's, I guess, role in good and evil and creating them to do either one. And I think this is very reflective of human beings, because no matter if we are a vampire or a human, we're still capable of good and evil. And does our nature excuse the decisions that we make every day? And both Louis and Gabriel grapple with these questions. So I found that a big similarity of both books. And another thing is that there are vampire killings in both of these books. So obviously Gabriel is a vampire hunter, but in this book, Louis has no qualms with killing vampires that he thinks are horrible and evil. So if you really like thought-provoking vampire stories that are told in a lot of flashbacks, then definitely go with both of these books. I will say that Empire of the Vampire is way more action-packed and more fantasy-esque than Interview with the Vampire, but both of them are really good reads. Next, if you liked Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, then you should read The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan. Both of these books are the first in a series, so we have the Ship of Magic series, and then we have the Draconis Memoria series, and the Ships of Magic do fit into the realm of the Elderlings, so I would not suggest starting with Ships of Magic, but the reason I decided to compare these 2 is that, number 1, we have the setting of maritime fantasy being on the ocean. So in the Ship of Magic, most of our characters are on ships that are alive. They are imbued with sentience, and they help these families have better trade and navigate through tough waters. And these families have these real relationships with these ships. And in the Draconis Memoria series, we are actually following not the whole series on the ocean, but there is a large chunk in a character, a perspective we follow of a captain of a ship. And the technology is a little bit different. They actually use dragon blood to help propel their ships and run their machines. And that leads me to another similarity between these 2 books, is that we have dragons. So if you've read The Realm of the Elderlings, you've seen it hinted that there are dragons in this world, or there's supposed to be dragons in this world. Well, in Mad Ship, we get more of a glimpse of dragons, and that becomes a way more important part to this series. And then in the Draconis Moria series, we are actually following a group of people as they are searching for this famous white dragon, because in this world, dragons are hunted for their blood, and their blood is used for a host of things, but some people are able to ingest it and get these magical abilities. So dragons are very much revered and feared in both of these worlds, and in both of these worlds, dragons are not really humans' friends. So in both of these books, you have maritime fantasy, dragons, well-developed worlds, multiple characters, multiple points of view, a lot of history, and a lot of politics brought into both of these stories. Next, if you liked Half a King by Joe Abercrombie, then you should read The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. Now, I have read the entire Shattered Sea trilogy. I've only read the first book in the Bone Ships. So both of these are also slightly maritime fantasies. A lot of the Shattered Sea takes place on a ship on this Shattered Sea, whereas the Bone Ships, at least the first book, takes place 99% on the ocean. In Half a King, we're following a character named Yarvi, and Yarvi is the son of this king, and through a series of unfortunate events, he is briefly raised to king, only to be betrayed by someone close to him and sent off onto a slave ship. And one thing about Yarvi is that he has a deformed hand. So for a lot of his life, he was treated as less than, his brother, and just looked down upon and treated horribly. So once he's on the slave ship and he has to row, he's a rower. That proves very difficult, given that he's down a hand. So one thing that I liked about both of these books, like I said, number one, the majority of the setting takes place on a ship, but number two, both of these ships are crewed by misfits and outlaws. So you have Yarvi, who is having to work together with all of these people that are condemned. They committed crimes, they did bad stuff, that's why they're on the ship. And then you have the Bone Ships, and the Bone Ships are essentially criminal ships. They were created to house criminals. They're prisons that are sent out on the ocean. That's what they do. So you have very similar settings with the characters in these books having to create a crew out of misfits and criminals. One thing that is different with the Shattered Sea series is that each book does follow a different character. However, all the other characters are present. It just follows a different character story within the story as a whole, and I'm pretty sure that the Bone Ships does not do that. I think if you enjoyed the Shattered Sea series, then you should give the Bone Ships a try. Next, if you liked Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence, then you should read The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. I have read the entire Broken Empire series by Mark Lawrence, and I am currently on book 3 of the Covenant of Steel series, which should be at my house in a couple days because I pre-ordered it. So the reason that I recommend both of these books is that they are similar in tone. I would consider them more dark fantasy. Both of them are first-person point of view, and we are following a young male character and his growth over the course of the series. In Prince of Thorns, we are following Jorg, and Jorg is the son of a king. He is a prince. When he was 13, he saw his brother and his mother get murdered, and he fled his role as a prince and ended up becoming the leader of this band of violent outlaws. But he just learns a couple things over the course of the book, and he decides to go reclaim his rightful place as king and eventually emperor. There is a lot of magic surrounding this book that has to do with necromancy that I wasn't expecting. And then we have kind of a similar story with the Pariah. So we're following Alwyn Scribe, who was born into a band of outlaws. And he ends up getting conscripted into the army and rises in the ranks. He doesn't want to become king. He doesn't want to become emperor, but he becomes an influential and powerful military leader by the second book. The magic system in this series, The Covenant of Steel, is not nearly as thorough as The Broken Empire, although I would say both magic systems compared to like Brent Weeks or compared to Brandon Sanderson are not nearly as comprehensive. Both of these books, you are following very goal-driven, ruthless, violent, intelligent young men as they are rising through the ranks to do what they have to do, which is why I think if you've read Prince of Thorns, you would enjoy Covenant of Steel. And lastly, if you enjoyed From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, then you would enjoy Kiss of Steel by Beck McMaster. Both of these are adult paranormal romance fantasies, and they're definitely for ages 18 plus. And both of them have vampires, essentially, but these vampires aren't like the vampires you would normally think about when you think of a vampire. The author did take some liberties and kind of creating something new with them. You are following a character that is about the same age, between 18 and 20 years old, and you are following a male lead that the main female character really cannot trust. So there is the enemies to lovers trope in both of these. In Kiss of Steel, we do have a setting that is more steampunky. It takes place in this alternate London, whereas in Blood and Ash, we are following that more medieval type fantasy setting. In both of these books, there are situations where our female lead cannot trust the male lead. The author does a really good job of casting like shadow of doubt on both of these relationships so that these characters don't trust one another. So that just gives like a lot of suspense to the books. I've only read the first book in both of these series. From Blood and Ash does continue with this individual story, whereas with Kiss of Steel, there is a story. It does have a beginning and an end, and it is contained in this one book. And the rest of the books in the series, I think, follow different characters. I think in book 2, it follows her sister, and it is a new story. It just takes place in the same world. However, if you like paranormal romance with an enemies to lovers trope, then you should check out Kiss of Steel if you enjoyed From Blood and Ash. All right, you guys, those are just a couple of suggestions. If you liked this book, then you should read this book. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!